So let's just commence with gentle figure of 8 around the hips. Turning, but also tipping. So here, this hip rising as I go around here, and then this just to free up the sacrum in as many planes and angles as possible. If you imagine for a martial artist, you're standing there waiting for your opponent to move. You've got no idea what he's going to do. So you have to be capable of any response. And so this sacrum here has to be able to move in any direction. We're trying to wake up the bottom part of the spine. So what we call the lower spine, the min meng down. Tail, sacrum, and the two lower lumbar vertebrae. So that's where we want maximum movement. So here my spine is really curling up. So we normally privilege movement in the upper body because we're used to feeling that and seeing that. Here we're just trying to get it in the lower body. riding horse. Let's just start breathing. We want to feel the breathing as two phases. So rather than seeing it as a breathing in and then breathing out, we split it into chest breathing and belly breathing. So let's start with the chest breathing. So if I'm just standing in riding horse, neutral, my spine vertical. So to breathe into the chest, I arch back and expand the chest. So this is pulling air into my chest by expanding the chest. And then I just relax that and I'll just come back to neutral. And then I expand again. And back to neutral. So I'm working to expand, I'm stretching, and then I'm letting the stretch just contract, relax back to normal. And then I stretch, the air comes in, and I relax, and that pushes the air out. Expand, contract. So working to expand and relaxing to contract. Feel the rib cage. We're wanting each rib to move away from its adjacent ones. So the chest is opening like this and like this, but also the ribs are pulling away from each other. And then it just relaxes back. So my upper spine is arching backwards, stretching the chest, and then it just relaxes back to the front. We want to feel the breathing in the spine, the action of the spine to make the breathing happen. Now just bringing it back to riding horse. So just let it settle a little bit. Feel the spine, the one spine ending in the sacrum and the tail, and feel the split from the sacrum into the legs. We want to keep each of those gateways from the sacrum into the legs open. So there's a feeling that something is pouring out of each side of the sacrum down the legs. Okay, now let's try the belly breathing. So the belly breathing is just like the opposite of the chest breathing. So on the chest breathing, in order to breathe in, I expanded. So I worked, I stretched to breathe in. With the belly breathing, the work phase is the breathing out. So what I do, I pull my belly in and pull my tail under, and that breathes out as much as is possible. And then I just relax that and the air comes back in. So let's try it with the hands like this. So just pulling the belly in. The belly pulls in, but it also pulls up. Because basically what's happening is you're contracting the volume of the belly, which is pushing the contents of the belly upwards and forcing the diaphragm to go further up than it normally does. And so you're getting more air out of the lungs. And then you just relax that back to the relaxed vertical state. And that will just draw air in to fill the space that's being created by your gut dropping back down to your belly. And now pulling in again, breathing out, remember, and then just relaxing the breath back in. And this is the one where you can do the pursed lip breathing. So as you breathe out and pull the belly in, blow out through the small hole, like you're trying to whistle. And then just let the air come in through the nose. So this is the breathing they recommend for yoga and Tai Chi and this sort of body work that's trying to just become more relaxed. And also it's the sort of breathing that a musician that plays a wind instrument, wind or brass. So they'd breathe in quickly and then they would have a long extended out breath. And if you watch a good wind player, then you can really see their abdomen working. It sucks right in as they extend their phrase. Now let's just go into the way we normally do this breathing. So contracting, so working to contract, and then expanding by just relaxing, and then expanding more, so working here to stretch, and then just relaxing that back. Working the contraction and relaxing, working the expansion and relaxing. So both the in-breath and the out-breath commence with a relaxation and end with a stretch, a sort of a tension. Tension, tendere, just means to stretch. So feel the chest expanding so that my whole front is stretching open. And then I just relax that. And now here I'm pulling in and I feel the stretch in my lower back. So this is the chest stretching open. And this is my lower back stretching apart. So my heels feel like they're wanting to come out even more. So chest breathing is using the chest to increase my capacity, my volume. And belly breathing is using the belly muscles to expel as much air out as possible. So in body work, especially yoga, they really emphasize the out breath. So trying to get as much air out as possible on each out breath, so the belly really sucks in. Okay, so let's just bring it back to riding horse. When we're meditating, we're concentrating on the belly breathing. You just want to make sure that you're working, because that will help keep the mind with it. So the enemy is the wandering mind. So I just want to be mindful, keep my mind with the processes that I'm going through. Feel the equilibrium, gravity pulling down through me, the ground pushing up through me. So even though it's obviously my own strength that's holding me up, I want to feel that it's something that's coming up from the ground, that's rising up through me. And now let's turn. Feel the spine just in the middle. You're revolving around it. And just let the whole body twist. So a bit different than the way we normally do it. Just let the head go. So you're trying to look completely behind yourself. So let it build up. So you can see the wall behind you. So the head's moving around a lot further, obviously, than the waist. I want the hips to hold the sacrum ever so lightly. So the sacrum feels like it can tip and turn and twist inside the compartment that the hips provide it. And then back. Just try a bit of the heart qigong. But here, just really loosening the bottom of the spine and just allowing the spine to stretch. So if we want to get into energy, everything has to remain open. So here I'm just trying to get the bottom of my spine, my tail, just to sort of lengthen down. The top of my head feel open, like it's beaming upwards. So here I'm just reaching out and just gathering into the heart. And then here I'm just aiming for the openness either end of the line, which is my spine. So if you want to use force, then you'll keep one end closed. So if I wanted to force these hands up here, I would close here and I would straighten my legs up into the spine to push the hands up even more. I want it to be energetic, so both ends of the line need to be open. I extend upwards, but I also drop down. Extend one arm up and just allow the spine just to sort of tip over. Remember, I want my end of my tail to be pointing down into the opposite leg. And the legs can bend or straighten. It shouldn't alter the flow of energy. So remember, when you use the legs in Tai Chi, you're using the legs as a supply of energy rather than to apply a force. So if I was trying to apply forces, I'd be straightening my legs all the time. And in Tai Chi, we're bending them all the time. And then just imagine you're pulling something down. Comes down into the heart, the belly, and then down the opposite leg. And just wait in the posture long enough for you to sort of relax into it, to relax into the openness. My tail is trying to straighten out and go down into this heel. And then I pull down. Let it drain down the leg and reach up with the other hand. And just let the hips tip. So this hip is dropping and this hip is rising with the arm. So we're just aiming for this, for the plane of the hips to always be rocking off the horizontal. just to free up the sacrum. And then back down. And now let's have the feet just a little bit wider. Basically the same exercise, but reaching forwards. So in order to get more reach, I really have to let go here in the shoulder to get the hand further forwards. Now, when I release here, I want to make sure I release in the hip as well. What I'd like is for the arm and the leg to be almost the same thing. So what's happening in the arm is happening in the leg. And then I just pull back in here and extend this side. Just aim for the release in the shoulder and the release in the hip, in the sacroiliac. And with all of this, we're trying to relax a part of the body. So here, the shoulder and the hip here, but really trying to locate that part of my mind that is analogous to that, the part of my mind that has to let go to allow the body to relax. So I'm having to really watch it, really listen, attend the situation, attend your own body with a mind that is really listening. And then wake up to the intention, especially on the way back in. So here my mind just makes a decision to draw it all in. And I want to feel that in the mind, slightly ahead of the body. So my body moves because it's been intended into movement. So the spirit has to make this command way, pull in, pull in. And this is what's so difficult, because we don't really like watching what we're doing. You want to be able to watch your own working as though it's someone else. The same attention, if you had to apply your critical mind to someone else, you'd find it quite easy, because we love finding fault. But we want to be able to do that with our own body. So here I'm releasing, especially here, this side of my hip. And then something in me just sparks and contracts. Something in me tightens. And that starts the movement. The same thing, but now reaching out with both hands. So the front hand is reaching out with the palm sort of facing out here, and the back hand is reaching out with the palm facing up, trying to twist towards that wall. And then as I draw in, they both come in, forming fists at the hip. So the spine's working quite hard with its twisting, but I want to keep this open here. I want to keep my sacroiliacs and my hip joints open, so that the energy down the spine can keep streaming down the legs. And then if we just speed it up, it becomes knocking the gates of life. Gather enough speed to give your belly a bit of a whack, so that it has to tighten up to protect itself. a bit more with the tilting of the hips. So you need a feeling for the plane of the hips so that you can direct something upwards from the hip. Keep going until you feel the sacrum relaxing. So despite what the hips are doing, the sacrum is still trying to just hang neutrally through this movement. Same sort of thing really, but just using the feet, just bringing the heel up. So one heel comes up, one heel goes down, but the heel that goes down doesn't quite touch the floor. So you feel quite wobbly because you're sort of suspended off your heels. So effectively there's no root because we root through the heel. So just think of the knee going out, turning here, this joint opening. Trying to get as much movement in the sacrum as possible in the hips. The sacrum feels like it's not moving. It obviously is. The sacrum has just become quiet inside itself. Feel those occasions when the heel hits the ground because of the balance being a bit wobbly. You really feel it all earthing. All this activity just gets earthed out of you by the heel touching the ground. So just keep the heels off the ground if you can. And just aim for maximum movement. There's maximum, these little movements, but sort of minimum big movements. But it doesn't take long with that one for the feet to get tired. Feel that movement in the feet. It's like the figure of 8 in the foot, which is just so important. Have a sense that it's always active. So if you think of this action of the hand, then the feet should be able to at least feel as though they're doing the same sort of thing. So when I do this with the foot, I'm sort of coming into the front of the foot. And when I do this with the foot, I'm pulling myself into the heel. So all the time, my weight is twisting and turning, shifting over the foot. It's not really the weight, it's more like just that spirited contact that you have with the ground, the touch. So we just want to really get used to touching with the feet. You know, like if you put your hand on someone, you don't put your weight over it, you know, unless you're doing shiatsu or something. You just sensitively feel them. So we want to feel that element in the foot. Obviously, there's some of my weight in the foot, which means that there'll be this sort of compressive heaviness, but also the foot is expanding and exploring. So let's just try the figures of 8s in the feet. You basically just make a figure of 8 with your hand and intend the movement into your foot. So as I do this, I'm going around the heel of the foot, and then I'm going around the front of the foot, little toe through the toes to the big toe. The big toe really presses into the ground to extend the energy into the outside of the heel. And then it comes around the back of the heel to the instep, through the instep to the little toe and around. So it feels as though there's an aspect of my weight, a little bit of my weight is following this pathway, but it's not really, it's more like an interest. That's where my mind is. And so that's where that's the point I'm really attending, and it's moving. Intention really is just the moving of a point of attention. And you want to feel it in the belly and the heart. So when we do a figure of 8 here with the hand like this, you feel it here. There's something happening in the heart, in the middle of the chest, that actually makes this figure of 8 true. Now we want to feel the same thing with the foot. So as I'm working my foot on the ground, the work is beginning in the belly in the same way that the work for the hand begins in the heart. So with your mind, you just have to make sure that it's beginning to switch from the hand to the foot. Problem with the hands, they're so sort of seductive. We're so familiar with them. But I'm using my hand to assist the energy in my foot. I have to make sure it remains that. And then the other foot. When I go around the heel is wanting to sink into the ground. Imagine you're on wet sand, the heel would really dig in here. And then when you come around the front of the foot, it's like your toes want to leave the ground. Your heel is with the root that's going down, and your toes are more with the energy that's coming up from the ground. Imagine you're on grass. You'd really be making a mess of the grass. And then just getting both going alternately. The weight is staying in the middle pretty much. You're just directing these paths of energy, intending these figures of eights. Picking the foot off the ground. What we want is that the body is being directed by what's happening in the lower body. So what's happening in the upper body is a reflection of what is happening in the lower body, has already happened in the lower body in a way. So there's a sort of lag. So to pick my foot off the ground, the way we would normally do it, I would move over this leg, sink maybe by bending the leg, and then I would lift this foot off the ground. So that's an action that requires minimum spirit. What we're trying to do all the time is intensify, is work with surplus, work with excess energy. John was always at pains to point out that the slowness of Tai Chi is simply slow motion. So when you do something in Tai Chi slowly, you're trying to do exactly what you would do if you did it so quick. It just passed, it was not visible, but really stretch that out with the same energies that you'd be using if you were doing it quick. So if you're using real speed, there'd be a hell of a lot of spirit. So this is what we want when we do it slowly. So what I want to do is get down into the ground beneath this foot by extending my tail. So something in me has to really become fierce and extensive so that the tail will open up and reach down. And that's why these movements here are important, the tipping with the hip, because I can't just go through the leg with the tail. In a way, it sort of lacks flamboyance. So there's a little bit of hamming artistry in this. You just got to ham it up. I just get my tail to just reach back behind me by tipping my hips like this. And then I just pull that tail down until it's in the ground beside my foot or under my heel. Your tail is like a little arm with a hand on the end, and the hand is reaching forwards and trying to grab. I extend my tail down. The hand of the tail grabs the ground. And that just gives me enough purchase so that I can lift this foot up. And I've gotten through the leg. Really, we're just trying to get the spine, the end of the spine, into the ground. And the legs are generally a barrier, but they don't have to be if you can wake up your tail and just get it to just whip down. When you get it, it really feels like you've got close to the ground, almost like I could rest my hand on the ground. When you see yourself in a mirror doing it, there's nothing of the sort. It's in the mind, which is where we want it. My mind has extended through this tail into the ground, and that has enabled this foot to come up with relative ease. So it has to happen here. There has to be this rotation. Otherwise, the tail won't reach. To get the tail to reach, I have to do something. I have to make an effort to open it up. So I have to sort of blow down it with my energy to get it to open up, and then it can just reach the ground, and then it just relaxes and it will pull me down. So I go round here into the ground, and this foot comes up. And this is all the way through the form. It's quite interesting because it feels like you're being really silly, like a little kid when you're doing it. But if you sort of watch yourself, video yourself, or just watch yourself in a mirror, it's just a real subtlety that's going on here that gives it a real lightness and looseness, like a color, like a cheerfulness. So here I'm going around this hip and down, and then this foot can come up. Videoing yourself doing the form, it's really instructive, I find. So this is the weight going into the foot. So it's not the figure of 8 in the foot. The figure of 8 in the foot simply gets the foot on the ground in a real clinging, sticky, elastic, dynamic way. This is actually getting my weight into the foot so that I can lift the other one. So if I was going to put this foot down with the figure of 8, I would just do this. My weight is still here, and now I need to bring the weight into the foot, which requires my tail to reach out. So I can put the big toe down and then figure of 8 with the foot to get the foot on the ground in the right way. And then I can use that contracting to pull the tail around this path. So it's quite complicated. We're just trying to split up all the components and just getting them all to work together. All the rooms in the mind, we want them to be open and clear. So here I'm putting the foot down with the figure of 8, and then I just get taken over. My tail sucks down. And this is how it tends to be with the form. So when you put your foot on the ground, then let's say, I'm going to do brush, knee and push. So I step forwards here, and then the foot going down is just this figure of 8, which gets me to here. But then my weight coming around this foot is this hand, which is coming around. So I figure of 8 here to get the foot on the ground, and now I extend my tail down into the ground, and that is assisted by the opposite hand. I put the foot down, figure of 8, which is the same hand as the foot, and then to get the tail to go round, I direct it with this hand. Like holding the ball, or with one hand out and one hand facing down, happens a lot in the form. It's just this. We need to appreciate just how fierce and intense and channeled the spirit and the intention needs to be to open up the system. When you've been working correctly, you should feel pretty whacked, shattered at the end of it. So when the spirit really wakes up and becomes active and you start to work correctly, you'll feel great. You'll feel really charged and in possession of yourself, like you're just working as a whole. But afterwards, there's a price to pay. So afterwards, you can feel broken into pieces, shattered. It's a good word for it. And sometimes it can take days to come back to wholeness. Remember in the Castaneda books, Don Juan used to use cold water So after Castaneda had come down off a trip, he'd throw him into the irrigation ditch outside his house. And the shock of that cold tightens you up in the right way. Bring it up. So here, the difficulty is here really, straightening without straightening. Straightening and still feeling the sacrum just reaching down, tail. So the openness, the extension in the tail is really an expression of your willingness to engage the outside world. So even when you're seemingly inactive and still and at peace, there can still be that curiosity that's reaching out of you. And that's very important in meditation too. Meditation tends to become this sort of slipping into an interiority, almost like an ego that's enclosed by this shell of you. What we would like is it just to be a real listening attentiveness to all the energies in the room. And just becoming aware, not so much of the energy inside you, but the energy that's passing through. So this, the equilibrium, the homeostasis, something in me is just seeping into the ground and something is coming up through me. Equilibrium. It's the most important thing, really. It's the one thing we've completely lost as a species. So if you think, you know, the capitalist economic system requires there to be growth all the time, so it requires a lack of equilibrium. And most of the things in our lives do. So the more comfortable we feel, the more we feel at peace with ourselves, you find the bigger your carbon footprint, the more you're actually consuming to create that comfort. Like with autoimmune diseases, it's just, for me, it's just lack of balance. There's lack of homeostasis. Something really pathologically out of balance in the human being now. We've forgotten even how to feel it. So Tai Chi is just coming back to equilibrium, really. Meditation as well.